Hey there, 90s kids. You picked the right night to tune in because we're dedicating this episode to the decade of boy bands, Beanie Babies, and Boy Meets World.
So find a comfortable spot on your beanbags and fill your fanny packs with some Dunkaroos because the Real Deal 90s special starts now.
Hello, and welcome to the very special edition of The Real Deal. I'm Andrew Bennett.
And I'm Kayli Russell. As usual, let's begin with Hollywood headlines. Only this week, Romelle Taday is here to deliver the biggest stories of the 1990s. Take it away, Romelle.
As the most expensive film ever made, Titanic steamed towards becoming Hollywood's first ever billion-dollar movie after smashing box office records around the world. By the Monday after the weekend release, the movie had earned a total of $918 million across the world and $516 million in foreign business on top of $402 million in the United States and Canada. Titanic, about a love affair aboard the doomed ocean liner, which sank in 1912, steamed past the former first-place holder Jurassic Park, which earned $913 million in 1993. Despite the warnings of critics before the film opened, Cameron's film had been nominated for 14 Academy Awards and won 11 at the 1997 Oscar ceremony. On February 10, 1993, Oprah sat down with Michael Jackson for what would be the most watched interview in television history. Jackson, a fiercely private entertainer, had refused to give an interview for 14 years. The unprecedented live event, which took place before any allegations were made about sexual abuse, drew a worldwide audience of 90 million people. It was the most exciting interview I had ever done, Oprah says. It certainly was going to be the most watched interview I had ever done. And on April 30th, 1997, The Puppy Episode, a two-part episode on the situation television comedy series Ellen, details lead character Ellen Morgan's realization that she is a lesbian and her coming out. Ellen DeGeneres, star of Ellen, began negotiating with ABC in 1996 to have Morgan reveal that she was gay. When word of the negotiations got out, DeGeneres found herself at the center of an intense speculation about when she, or her character, or both, would come out, with DeGeneres hinting at her and her characters coming out both within the show and off-screen. The rumors were confirmed when the episode went into production in March of 1997. Despite threats from advertisers and religious groups, The Puppy Episode was an enormous ratings success, won multiple awards, and became a cultural phenomenon. But regardless of the episode's success, DeGeneres and her show quickly garnered criticism for being too gay. The series was canceled after one more season, and DeGeneres and guest star Laura Dern faced career backlash. And those were the biggest headlines of 1990s. I'm Romelle Taday, and this has been Hollywood Headlines.
Thanks, Romelle. I'm glad Ellen's career backlash was short-lived. I don't want to imagine what daytime television show would be like without Ellen's sweet dance moves.
Not to mention, she's still one of the greatest Oscar hosts of the last decade. Speaking of the Oscars, Beal is here to rehash some of the 90s biggest Academy snubs. Aaron?
The Academy so often makes the wrong choice, like the King's Speech winning over The Social Network for Best Picture. More often, they leave out great films completely, for instance, when The Dark Knight wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. The 90s also had their fair share of snubs. Let's start with 1990. Martin Scorsese's gangster masterpiece Goodfellas lost out to Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves for Best Picture. A rule I've always lived by: when you have it narrowed down between Kevin Costner and anyone else, you go with anyone else. 1992. Gary Oldman is one of the greatest actors of his generation, and he went the entirety of the 90s without a single nomination. His most notable snub was when he played the title character in Bram Stoker's Dracula. He is truly terrifying in the role and is his best performance to date. It's a shame that a good portion of his scenes are spent alongside an unfortunately cast Keanu Reeves, who it turns out is not one of the greatest actors of his generation. 1994. While I'm a big fan of Martin Landau's performance as Bela Lugosi in Tim Burton's Ed Wood, the Oscar should have gone to Gary Sinise for Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. Landau was great, but Sinise's Lieutenant Dan is now iconic and it's still relevant. Plus, people have actually seen Forrest Gump. Only 13 of us have seen Ed Wood. Rent it. It's a Tim Burton movie, and it has Johnny Depp. 1996, Fargo, written and directed by the Coen brothers, is one of the best movies of the 90s, but the 1997 Oscar for Best Picture was awarded to The English Patient, a movie that did a great job of curing my insomnia. If you haven't seen it already, rent it, buy it. Steve Buscemi gets flustered and shoots people. You'll love it. Also, a wood chipper is used, but not for its intended purpose. 1998, Saving Private Ryan. One of the greatest war movies ever made. It really did deserve to win that Best Picture. Wait, that's right. Shakespeare in Love took home the prize that year. I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen all of Saving Private Ryan, but it really seems like it should have won. I hear good things. It's on my list. 1999. It really says a lot about Tom Cruise's talent as an actor when I'm legitimately creeped out by him off camera and completely invested when he's on camera. Cruise gives his career performance in Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. He was nominated, but he really should have won. His role as Frank T.J. Mackey is so very different from his other work, and the scene when he visits his estranged father on his deathbed makes me weep every time. Not just misty. Weep. It's brutal. Now, whether or not you agree with all my choices, I think we can all agree that the biggest Oscar snub of the 90s was 1997's Good Burger with Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell. I mean, they clearly must not have even seen the movie. But you know, it's all political anyway.
Thanks, Aaron. Time for our first break. Take this opportunity to feed your Tamagotchi that you've most likely neglected.
Meanwhile, check out which movies ruled the box office during the 1990s in this week's box office report. Stick around.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Boy, do I hate being right all the time.
Welcome back. For those of you who are late to the party, we hope you took the time during the break to disable your AOL account. That stuff be cray.
As if AOL was all that in a bag of chips. And what is this cray you're talking about?
You'll eventually catch on, Kayli. Moving along, Aidan Hall is here with a top 5 that all of the 9-year-olds in us will appreciate. Aidan?
How's it hanging, all you dudes and dudettes out there? The 90s have brought us some pretty righteous stuff. We all totally remember that radical group of peeps from that rockin' show Friends, not to mention those gnarly kids rocking the 90210. However, all the you 90s babes out there, like me, totally remember one thing about the rest. Cartoons! Back in the day, nothing beat coming home and surfing the tube. We all loved us some cartoons, and I thought the top 5 most righteous. So grab your Furby and hold on, because things are about to get totally awesome. Number 5, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Back in 1999, one brave little hombre had to save his owner's time and time again from the evils that came to their groovy little shack in the town of nowhere. That little purple pooch faced everything from Bigfoot to crazy gerbil scientists to try and protect sweet Muriel and that total bummer Eustace. That little bro taught us all that we didn't need to be perfect. So long as we faced our fears, everything would be totally rad. No matter the odds, that adorable little dude stood up to protect his friends and family, and that's a message that we can all groove to. Number 4, Dexter's Lab. When you've got a wicked lab of a pad and you're doing all kinds of groovy experiments and your sister comes down and crashes your party, well, you'd be pretty annoyed just like our little amigo Dexter. Back in 1996, we all got our first glimpse into the rad stuff going on in Dexter's Lab. That little gnarly genius sure knew how to rock a test tube, and his sister Dee Dee always managed to screw up his day. We all love sitting back and watching Dexter outsmart that dweeb of a nerd Mandark. Little Dexter made science pretty rad, and thanks to him, I'll always know what cheese omelet is. Omelette du fromage. Number 3, the Animaniacs. Back in 1993, that righteous director Steven Spielberg tried his hand at making a tubular cartoon. What we got was the Animaniacs, and we never looked back. Those crazy cats Yakko Wacko and Dot Warner always put a stellar smile on our faces, yeah. They always showed that dynamite duo of world conquerors Pinky and the Brain. The show ran for 5 groovy years, and it's still pretty popular. I know we all sang along to that pretty mesmerizing tune they had as their theme song. Number 2, Hey Arnold. Down in that hood, close to where that Fresh Prince was born and raised, that little football head hung out in the park, spending most of his days. In 1996, we were introduced to Arnold and his whole happening crew. Arnold would go around each episode and help the people in his neighborhood, and you started to feel for the little dude. I still cry when I watch that Christmas special. That righteous dude made you want to go out and help your bros. Because the most important people are the dudes and dudettes you share the good and bad times with. And number 1, Rugrats. No show better shows how we righteous dudes and dudettes pictured the world when we were in diapers better than Rugrats. Made in 1991, this was the second Nicktoon ever made, and it's still pretty popular today. That righteous group, led by King Dude, Tommy Pickles, always went on all kinds of gnarly adventures. Even when you watch it now, you feel like you were a kid again. And any tune that's like that's able to make you feel that way, well, it deserves to be spot number 1 on this wicked list. And that, my groovy companions, wraps up my list of the top 5 90s cartoons. So all you cool cats and dynamite dogs out there, keep it real and surf the waves for me. I'm Aidan, Righteous Man Hall, and this has been the top 5.
Thanks, dude. I must say, Aidan, I'm a little disappointed you didn't delve into the paradox that plagued my entire childhood. How the heck did Cat Dog go to the bathroom?
I have my theories, and trust me, Kayli, you do not want to go there. Almost time for our next break, but first is our recommendation of the week. Tom Hanks was undeniably the king of the 90s, churning out dramas, comedies, and some of the decade's most iconic lines. However, our recommendation this week is a little gem you may not have heard of.
That Thing You Do, directed, written by, and starring Mr. Hanks, follows the Wonders, a young band in the 1960s who find themselves thrust into fame after their catchy tune, That Thing You Do, leads to a national tour across the country. Hilariously nostalgic and complete with a killer soundtrack, this movie is perfect for the whole family.
So without further ado, here's the trailer for That Thing You Do. We hope you get a kick out of the voiceover guy. Check it out.
Guy Patterson didn't have a perfect job or a perfect social life.
What's going on down there?
Cooking the books as usual, Dad.
But what he did have was perfect timing.
How about sitting in for Chad just for tonight?
Why?
Just broke his arm.
And in one night,
That's too fast, Guy. Slow down! Guy, slow down!
Guy Patterson is going to take the Wonders from garage
I almost slugged some girl. She had her eye on Nick Jimmy.
to greatness.
Here's somebody I want you to meet. Mr. White is with Playtone Records.
That thing you do, you know, is snappy. We'd like to release it.
We be on tour?
Well, Mama, son who loves you just left us in the lurch. Darlene, you just got promoted.
You mean you're gonna start paying me?
I didn't say that.
America's own Wonders!
Put that down. That is a very expensive floor display.
We bow, and we're off the stage before the applause dies out. It's very important you don't stink today.
Hey, I make no guarantees.
You guys look great in red. Have I told you that yet?
Come on, pretty baby.
You got the #7 record in the country.
He's got a very pretty girlfriend, doesn't he?
Is it serious, you know?
Very serious. I'm single.
What about the bass player?
You fellas look great in gold. Have I told you that? What about Guy there?
I mean, he's amazing.
Amazing.
20th Century Fox presents
This is Mr. White. Are you sleeping? Just calling to tell you to get your patootie down to the television studio. You're gonna be on TV tonight.
a story about the time in every life when the hopes you hold on to
Faye's special, isn't she?
and the dreams you dream
None of this would have happened if you hadn't joined the band.
become that thing you do. That thing you do. directed by Tom Hanks.
Look fabulous in the black suits. Have I told you that? Hi. Fabulous in the black suits.
Welcome back. It's hard to believe that some of our favorite actors today were beginning their rise to fame just 20 short years ago. Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, George Clooney.
Pauly Shore. What? You can't tell me he isn't the greatest thing to come out of the 90s.
While I go get Andrew's head examined, here's Ashley Lohman with her pick of the greatest 90s star in Actor Spotlight. Ashley?
With this being our special 90s themed episode, for this edition of the Actor Spotlight, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about a star who really first started to shine during this wonderful decade. This particular actor is widely known for his humorous performances in roles such as an over-the-top pet detective, a very inquisitive villain, and a lawyer who loses it when he realizes that he can't tell a lie. That's right, I'm talking about the hilarious Jim Carrey. While we all know him as Jim Carrey the actor, he actually started out as a comedian doing stand-up routines in comedy clubs while he was still living in Canada. In 1990, he took his act to television when he joined the sketch comedy show In Living Color. While being cast in the show did get him noticed, and even though he had played various supporting roles in low-budget films leading up to it, he really still didn't feel like he'd really broken out into the acting scene. In 1994, he finally got what he had been waiting for when he played the role of Ace Ventura, the pet detective. His extremely goofy antics in this slapstick comedy definitely got him recognition, because in the same year, he was also asked to take on the leading roles of Stanley Ipkiss in The Mask and Lloyd Christmas in Dumb and Dumber. In 1995, he played the role of the Riddler, one of Batman's most eccentric and psychotic enemies in Batman Forever. The sequel to the first Ace Ventura movie, Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, also came out that year. He also played the leading roles in The Cable Guy in '96, Liar Liar in '97, The Truman Show in '98, and Man on the Moon in '99. Although his role as Truman Burbank in The Truman Show was a little more serious than those that he'd previously portrayed, every role Carrey played back in the day allowed him to show his extreme flair for comedy in some way. Obviously, he did something right, because if I did my math right, he had at least one film he starred in released every year since In Living Color ended in 1994. And you know, he's still releasing funny movies today. Well, I, for one, certainly enjoy his performances. The Ace Ventura movies are some of my all-time favorite comedies, and I loved Batman Forever in general, not to mention his fantastic performance as the Riddler. That wraps up this edition of the Actor Spotlight. I'm Ashley Lohman.
Thanks, Ashley. While Jim Carrey was great as the Riddler, I have to give the edge to Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. Spoiler alert, he becomes the governor of California at the end of the movie.
Kayli, never mind. Jim Carrey wasn't the only stirring up the laughs in the 90s. Saturday Night Live was at its peak of hilarity. Here with a breakdown of the decade's cast is Chauncey Baker. Chauncey, I've got a fever, and the only prescription is more...
Cowbell?
No, I was gonna say more great real deal content. Chauncey?
Let's face it, the 90s were awesome, so I'm a bit hard-pressed to find something to rant about. Instead, I will talk about a very important show to this 90s kid, Saturday Night Live. SNL holds a special place in my heart because as a little kid, it was the one night of the week when I could stay up late and watch TV with my parents. Well, at the time, a lot of the jokes went straight over my head, but the show played an important role for the Baker clan. First things first, there were two incarnations of the SNL cast during the 90s. There was the early 90s, which featured the likes of David Spade, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, and Norm Macdonald. Personally, one of my favorite sketches was Chris Farley's portrayal of the down-on-his-luck motivational speaker Matt Foley. This clumsy character would often end his sentences with, wait a minute, living in a van down by the river. This could easily be the series catchphrase of the early 1990s. Another highlight of the early 90s was the inclusion of Adam Sandler. Now, this comedian needs no introduction, but with gems like Hanukkah Song and the Sweatshirt songs, he is guaranteed to make anyone laugh. My favorite sketch of his was The House Sitter. He's a teenage boy who is willing to take care of your house, no matter what that involves. Chris Farley reiterates everything he says in his abrasive, yet hilarious fashion. SNL has had its fair share of hilarious guest host spots, but one of my favorites is the Chippendale Dancers with Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley. Another funny guest host moment came with Alec Baldwin with his sweaty balls. This sketch is bound to stimulate your appetite. A crucial element to the show has been the Weekend Update segment. Ever since Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin in the 1970s, the parody news sketch has seen the likes of Norm Macdonald, Kevin Nealon, Dennis Miller, and Colin Quinn. The late 1990s brought along Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan. While this era had some really funny sketches, it also had its fair share of duds. Yes, the Roxbury guys were funny for about maybe the first 30 times, and Mango got on my nerves pretty fast. Now don't get me wrong, one of my favorite segments came out of the later periods. Let's just say it involves Christopher Walken and more cowbell. The presidential debate sketches were also hilarious. With Will Ferrell as George W. Bush and Daryl Hammond as Al Gore, you'll need a lockbox to hold your laughter in. Easily the funniest dynamic duo to come of the late 1990s was Horatio Sands and Jimmy Fallon. My favorite sketch with these two funny comedians did was Jared's Room. With Jimmy as Jared and Horatio as his stoner friend, this webcam sketch had me laughing every time. 30 Rock's Tina Fey also got her start on SNL. She often teamed up with Amy Poehler on sketches, and they both later on to become Weekends of the Weekend Update. Whew, that was a lot of content to cover. Basically, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that both incarnations of the SNL cast from the 90s were very funny. I can't pick which cast was funnier, although you can never replace the late Chris Farley. Currently, the show is still funny, but it is also a mere shadow of what it used to be. Until then, I'm Chauncey Baker, and la-di freaking da!
Thanks, Chauncey. When we return, we'll get a special edition of Eli's episode of the week and a very nostalgic final word. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Eli Ralston returned with a new episode this week. And because this is our 90s episode, we know he can't possibly have picked The Walking Dead.
I wouldn't be so sure, Andrew. This is Eli after all. However, I learned my lesson from last week, and I am not comfortable making wagers of any kind. So let's just see what he picked this week. Eli?
God, I'm so bored. TV today sucks.
Yeah, I'm done watching the stupid crap they put on TV today.
Hey guys, what's up?
We're just talking about how TV today sucks.
Yeah, most TV shows today suck. I miss the shows of the 90s, where it wasn't all about sex.
Drugs.
And teen pregnancies.
You know what show I really liked? Friends.
That was a good show. Why do you like that, Jimmy?
Wow. Friends. A show that brought a whole 10 seasons and a whole bunch of laughs. It's so hard to pick one episode to talk about, but if I had to, I would pick season 4 episode, the one with the embryos. In this episode, Rachel comes home from shopping, and Joey and Chandler just so happen to correctly guess what was in that bag. From this, they decide to have a trivia game to show who knows each other better, Chandler and Joey versus Rachel and Monica, while Ross decides to be the unbiased witness and come up with the quiz questions himself. This episode brings in a lot of laughs, and I can always watch it over and over again, and still find it funny. If you haven't seen this episode, you need to sort out your priorities.
Friends is good, but personally, I really like Full House. No show taught us the importance of family in the 90s like Full House did. It first began in 1987 and had its ending season in 1995. Full House fans will always remember DJ's first serious boyfriend, Steve, Stephanie's love for dance, how bratty Michelle was in her toddler years, and the unforgettable episode when Jesse finally settles down and marries Rebecca, singing his song Forever to her at their wedding. But my all-time favorite Full House episode has to be when the cast goes to Disney. It's hard for a fan not to love that Full House and Disney were combined to make a 2-part episode called The House Meets the Mouse, showing their crazy adventures around the theme park. Full House will forever stand as one of my favorite shows of all time.
Okay, both of your choices were good, but they both pale in comparison to not only the best show to come out of the 90s, but possibly the greatest sitcom of all time, Seinfeld. Yes, America's favorite show about nothing has earned the coveted spot on my list of the best show to come out of the 90s. Whether it's Jerry's stealing of the marble rye from an old lady, or Elaine having to decide which man is sponge-worthy, or George's problem with the cold pool and shrinkage, or Kramer just being Kramer. This show does not have one single episode in all of its 9 seasons that I would not want to watch over and over again. But my all-time favorite episode of this series has to be the infamous Soup Nazi. This episode, we find the Fab Four having to deal with the infamous Soup Nazi and his very difficult ordering method. And if you don't order quite the right way,
no soup for you!
The way that every single person in the city is downright frightened to anger this Soup Nazi because of his delicious soup.
I'm sorry. This is what comes from living under a Nazi regime.
Whether it's the Soup Nazi, the puffy shirt, the marble rye, basically any episode of this show will not disappoint you. If you're looking for a good classic throwback show, or just a new show or a show that you would love to watch, pick Seinfeld.
Booyah! Booyah. Told you would pick The Walking Dead.
Whatever.
Anyways, it's about that time, but before we go, it's time for our final word. Take it away, Kayli.
Now, I was still in the womb when the 90s began, so growing up, I didn't start appreciating this fantastic decade until the late 90s and early 2000s. But I clearly remember one amazing thing from that decade which entertained me for hours: Nickelodeon. After my Barney phase, I loved Nickelodeon. I religiously watched The Amanda Show, All That, Hey Arnold's, Rugrats, Ah Real Monsters. I mean, the list goes on and on. These shows were the epitome of my childhood. My brother and my cousins would get together and act out our own version of Rocket Power and the Nickelodeon game shows. And speaking of the game shows, although these aired in the early 90s, I was able to watch plenty of reruns thanks to technology. So I attribute my unhealthy fascination with game shows to Nickelodeon. Now, I think I like shows such as Figure It Out, Legends of the Hidden Temple, Double Dare 2000, Global Guts, and Get the Picture more than I liked the cartoons. I longed to be on these shows and to get slimed. So for me, the best thing to come out of the 90s was Nickelodeon. Now it's just not the same as it used to be, and I pity those kids who think Big Time Rush is the greatest show ever.
Well, for my final word, I will be talking about a movie from the 90s that single-handedly changed my life. It is also the only movie I will ever admit has brought tears to my eyes, and still sometimes does. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I am talking about Jurassic Park. Not quite what you were expecting? Well, let me explain. Terror and wonder. These are the two words that come to my mind when thinking about childhood. And I can't think of two emotions that better represent Jurassic Park. I'm not going to stand here and argue that Jurassic Park is a perfect film. But let me jog your memory as to why it is still one of the most spectacular. Reason number one, the T-Rex. The initial T-Rex attack is some of the greatest tense, scary movie making of the 90s, period. Reason two, when Grant and Ellie first see the Brachiosaurus. This scene still makes me cry every time I watch it, and it's not like I don't know what to expect at this point. I can't think of any other scene in movie history that invokes as much wonder. My third reason, raptors in the kitchen. Do I need to say anything else? Do yourself a favor and rewatch Jurassic Park. It will surely bring out the little boy or girl in you.
And that does it for us this week. Check out The Real Deal Twitter and Facebook pages for updates on all things entertainment. Until next time, I'm Kayli Russell.
And I'm Andrew Bennett. See you next week for our mid-season finale.